Billionaire disguised himself as a beggar. His son failed the test. The wind was cold that morning, sharp enough to sting the skin. People hurried past the old bus station, heads down, trying not to look at the man sitting quietly by the broken bench. His clothes were dusty, his hair messy, and his hands looked tired from a life too heavy for one person. Yet his eyes were gentle. His name was Daniel. Every day before dawn, he came to the small coffee stall near the station. He never bought anything because he could barely afford food for himself, but he always helped the owner, an older woman who struggled to keep the business running. He carried boxes, swept the floor, and fixed small things, even though she never asked. She sometimes tried to pay him, but he always shook his head. "Keep it," he said softly. "You need it more." That morning felt different. While Daniel was sweeping leaves, he noticed a man slowly walking toward the stall. The man wore torn clothes and his beard looked untrimmed, like he hadn't seen a mirror in weeks. People stepped far away from him, whispering, but Daniel looked closer. The man's eyes were sharp, observant, not lost like most beggars. Something about him didn't fit. Daniel approached him. "Sir, are you okay? Do you need water?" The man stared at him as if surprised someone even noticed him. I, I'm fine," he said in a low voice, but Daniel could hear the exhaustion behind it. A few minutes later, the man sat on the bench and watched Daniel help a young mother carry her stroller down the steps. Daniel smiled kindly at her baby, making the child laugh. The strange man kept watching him with a quiet, unreadable expression. What Daniel didn't know, what no one around them knew, was that the beggar sitting there was actually one of the richest men in the country, a billionaire, a man whose face never appeared in the news even though everyone knew his name. Today he had come here for a secret reason, wearing clothes that hid everything he owned. And he came with a test for his only son. The son who was supposed to inherit everything yet had never known what true kindness looked like. But as Daniel wiped his hands and looked toward the bench, he saw the billionaire's son approaching from the opposite side of the station. The young man walked confidently, dressed in expensive clothes, holding his phone like nothing in the world mattered but his own comfort. The disguised billionaire watched him closely, his eyes full of worry and something like disappointment. The son slowed down in front of him, frowning at the beggar on the bench. Daniel sensed tension in the air. Something important was about to happen, something he didn't understand yet. The narrator turns to the audience for a brief moment. Have you ever helped someone without knowing who they truly were? What if one small act could change everything? Before Daniel could say a word, the son stepped closer to the disguised billionaire, and the first part of the test began. Daniel had no idea that this moment would change his life forever. And then something happened that made Daniel take a step forward, his heart suddenly tight with concern. The young man stopped in front of the disguised billionaire and wrinkled his nose. "Why are you sitting here?" he said coldly. "You're blocking the bench." The older man looked up at his son. There was pain in his eyes, but his voice stayed soft. "Just resting for a while," he answered. The son sighed and glanced around to see who was watching. "There are shelters for people like you," he said. "Go there. Don't sit in public like this. It looks bad." Daniel heard every word. His chest tightened. He saw the way the beggar lowered his eyes as if he was ashamed just for existing. The people passing by pretended not to hear. No one wanted trouble. The son stepped closer, his face full of irritation. "Did you at least look for a job? Or do you just beg all day?" "Hey," Daniel said quietly before he could stop himself. He walked closer, holding the broom in one hand. "That's not fair." The son turned his head sharply. "What you don't know his story," Daniel said. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled a little. "You shouldn't talk to him like that." For a second, their eyes met, Daniel's tired but firm, the young man's proud and offended. The disguised billionaire watched them both, his heart heavy. "And who are you?" the son asked, his lawyer. "No," Daniel answered. "Just someone who knows what it's like to struggle." The son scoffed and shook his head. "Whatever." He turned away, put his earphones back in, and walked off toward the parking lot where a black luxury car waited for him. The billionaire watched his son leave with a look that was almost broken. Then his gaze went back to Daniel. "Thank you," he said quietly. Daniel shrugged, embarrassed. "I just don't like seeing people being spoken to like that. You want some tea, I can ask the stall owner to give you a cup. I'll pay later." The older man studied him. "You don't look like someone who has extra money." Daniel gave a small, sad smile. "I don't. But it's okay." The billionaire's eyes softened. "What is your name, Daniel?" "I'm Mark," the man said after a short pause. "Nice to meet you, Daniel." They shook hands. The billionaire's grip was firm, used to power. Daniel's was rough, used to work. They didn't know it yet, but their lives had just touched in a way that would change both of them. Daniel's day always started before sunrise. He lived in a small one-room apartment on the edge of the city. The building was old. The paint on the walls was cracked, and the pipes made strange sounds at night. Their front door didn't close properly unless you pushed it twice, but it was the only place he could afford. Inside that small space lived three people: Daniel, his mother, and his little sister Lily. His mother Maria had once been strong and full of energy. She used to work as a cleaner in an office building, laughing with the other workers and bringing home small treats when she could. But a few years ago, she developed a heart problem. Now she moved more slowly, often sitting in the old armchair by the window, pressing her hand against her chest when she was tired. Lily was 14 with big, curious eyes and a quiet smile. She dreamed of becoming a nurse, but she never said it too loudly. She knew how thin their wallet was. That morning before going to the bus station, Daniel boiled water in a dented kettle and made instant noodles for his family. He put more noodles in his mother's bowl, less in his own. "Danny," his mother said, noticing. "You did it again. Take some of mine." "It's fine, Mom," he replied. "I'll eat later at the stall. Maybe Mrs. Hanna will get me something." "You said that yesterday," Lily whispered. "But when you came home, you still looked hungry." Daniel smiled and tapped her forehead lightly. "You worry too much. You're the kid here, remember?" He sat on the edge of the bed holding his bowl. The room was quiet except for the sound of the meeting. Outside, cars passed and dogs barked. Life went on even when money was running out. On the small table near the door, there was a stack of unpaid bills: electricity, water, old medical fees for his mom's hospital visits. Daniel tried not to look at them. Every time he did, it felt like a weight pressed harder on his chest. After breakfast, he helped his mother stand and walk a few steps to stretch her legs. "Are you okay today?" he asked. "Some days are better than others," she said softly. "Don't worry, just don't overwork yourself, Daniel." He laughed without humor. "Overwork is the only kind of work I have." He used to study at a community college. For a short time, he believed his life could change. He dreamed of becoming an electrician or technician, something stable, something that would lift his family out of this cycle. But when his mother's health dropped, he left school. The family needed the money from his part-time jobs more than they needed his diploma. Now his days were full of small jobs, helping at the coffee stall near the bus station, working night shifts, unloading boxes at a warehouse when he could fixing neighbors' broken fans or lights for a few coins. He never rested because rest meant less income. Later that day, after meeting Mark the beggar, he kept thinking about the incident as he carried a crate of bottled drinks to the stall. Who was that rude young man? Mrs. Hanna asked. She had seen part of what happened from behind her counter. Probably someone rich, Daniel answered. He had a driver waiting. Mrs. Hanna clicked her tongue. Money doesn't always bring manners. Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe he's just having a bad day. You always excuse people, she said. You're too kind. That's why life hits you so hard. He didn't argue. Maybe she was right. But he still believed people could change. That afternoon after his shift at the stall, he went to help Mr. Alvarez, an old neighbor in their building. The man's hands shook too much to fix his own light bulb. You don't have to pay me, Daniel said when the light finally turned on. At least take this, the old man insisted, pressing a crumpled bill into his hand. You're a good boy, Daniel. Don't let this world make you hard. On his way back, Daniel stopped at a small shop and used that money to buy bread and cheap milk for Lily. He skipped buying anything for himself again. At night, when his mother and sister were asleep, he sat by the window looking at the city lights in the distance. His stomach hurt from hunger, but his mind hurt more from worry. How long can we keep living like this? He whispered to himself. He thought about getting another job, maybe as a cleaner or dishwasher. But there were only so many hours in a day, and his mother needed him sometimes during the day for hospital visits. He was stuck doing his best, but always one step away from losing everything. His phone screen lit up with a message from the warehouse manager. No shift for you this week. Business is slow. Daniel closed his eyes. That meant even less money. He rubbed his face with both hands. It's okay, he told himself. Something will work out. It has to. The image of the man at the bus station came back to his mind. The tired eyes, the way he said, "Thank you," like he wasn't used to kindness. And then he thought about the rich young man, full of pride, stepping into a luxury car without a second thought. Two very different worlds crossing for a moment. Late that night, as he was about to lie down on the thin mattress he shared with Lily, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number. This is Hannah. A man came to the stall this evening asking about you. He said his name was Mark. He told me to tell you he wants to talk to you tomorrow morning at the station. Daniel stared at the message, his heart beating a little faster. Why would a homeless man want to see him again? He didn't know that Mark was not just any man. He didn't know that tomorrow morning would be the first step into a world he never imagined he would enter. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the bus station earlier than usual. The air was cool, and a thin mist hung over the street. He carried a small bag of bread, half for his sister, half for his mother. He hadn't eaten breakfast again, but he didn't think about that now. He looked around the station. People were already lining up for buses. Street vendors were setting up their stalls. But the bench where Mark had sat yesterday was empty. Daniel wondered if the man would even come. At the coffee stall, Mrs. Hannah handed him a cup of warm tea. Drink, she said. You look pale. Just tired, he answered. But deep down, he felt nervous. Why would a homeless man look for him? Maybe he needed help. Maybe something happened. Around 10 minutes later, Daniel saw him, Mark, walking slowly toward the bench. He was wearing the same torn jacket, the same old shoes. But today, Daniel noticed something else about him, the way he walked, the way he held himself. Even in those worn clothes, he moved with confidence, like someone who had power once, or maybe still did. Daniel approached him. Morning, Mark. Good morning, Daniel, the older man said. He smiled, but there was sadness behind it. Thank you for coming. Of course, Daniel said. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Mark studied him for a moment. You helped me yesterday, even when you didn't have to. Not many people do that anymore. Daniel shrugged. Kindness doesn't cost money. A shadow crossed Mark's face. Sometimes people who have everything forget that. Daniel wasn't sure what he meant, but he didn't push. I want to tell you something, Mark said. But not here. Walk with me. They walked toward a quiet corner of the station, away from the crowds. Mark leaned against a wall and looked out at the street. Cars passed. People hurried. Life moved fast around them. I wasn't born poor, Mark began. In fact, I'm the founder of Morris Enterprises. Daniel blinked. Wait, the company that builds hospitals and schools. That huge engineering firm. Yes. Daniel stared at him in shock. He had seen the name on billboards on TV. The man beside him, dressed as a beggar, owned one of the biggest companies in the country. That doesn't make sense, Daniel said finally. Why are you dressed like this? Why were you sitting on that bench? Mark took a deep breath as if the answer hurt. Because I wanted to see the truth, not the one people show me when they know who I am, but the truth of how my son treats others. Daniel didn't speak. He sensed this was something painful. My son Adrian is 24, Mark continued. He is supposed to inherit the company one day. But lately I fear he has lost his way. Too much luxury. Too many people telling him he's special, even when he has done nothing to earn it. Daniel remembered the young man from yesterday, the cold eyes, the cruel tone. That was your son, yes, Mark whispered. Daniel felt a twist in his stomach. The young man had insulted his own father without knowing. I tried many things to teach him: humility, responsibility, kindness, Mark said. Nothing worked. So I created a test. A simple one. I disguised myself as a homeless man. I wanted to see how he would treat someone who had nothing. Daniel already knew the answer. But what I didn't expect, Mark said softly, was to meet someone like you. Daniel's heart skipped. Me? Why me? Because you showed kindness to a stranger. You defended someone you thought was beneath you in status. You didn't care about what others thought. You acted from the heart. Daniel looked down, embarrassed. It wasn't a big deal. It was, Mark insisted. It showed me something I had been searching for in my own son. Mark paused, and the weight of his disappointment hung heavy in the air. My wife Adrian's mother died when he was young. Mark continued. Since then, I tried to fill the hole in his heart with comfort, money, and gifts. But maybe I made things worse. I wanted to protect him from pain, but I also protected him from learning compassion. Daniel listened quietly. There was deep sadness in this man, a wound that wealth couldn't heal. I sit in boardrooms, Mark said. I sign contracts worth millions. I control companies. But the thing I can't control is my own son's heart. Daniel felt a surprising wave of sympathy for him. Money didn't solve everything. Sometimes it made life more complicated. So what are you going to do, Daniel asked. Mark sighed. I don't know yet. But yesterday, you showed me something important. You showed me that character doesn't come from money or education. It comes from choices. He turned to Daniel, his eyes searching. Tell me about your life. I asked Hannah about you. She only said you work too hard. Daniel hesitated. There's not much to tell. Let me decide that. So slowly Daniel told him. About his mother's illness. About Lily's dreams. About leaving school. About working 3 jobs. About the unpaid bills and the fear that one day they would lose their home. He spoke softly, almost ashamed, like someone revealing an old scar. Mark listened with full attention, not interrupting, not judging. When Daniel finished, he expected pity. But Mark didn't give him that. Instead, he said, You are stronger than you think, and your family's lucky to have you. Daniel swallowed hard. He wasn't used to hearing praise. Then Mark said something that made Daniel tense. I want to help you. Daniel shook his head immediately. No, I can't accept that. I don't want charity. This isn't charity, Mark said calmly. This is gratitude. But why you don't owe me anything? Mark looked at him with steady eyes. You were kind to me at a moment when I needed it. And you didn't even know who I was. That means something. Daniel didn't answer. His heart was beating fast. He felt confused, overwhelmed. Mark continued, Come to my office tomorrow, not as a beggar you helped, but as the man I truly am. I want to show you something. Daniel stared at him. Your office. But I don't belong in a place like that. You do, Mark said firmly, more than many people there. Daniel didn't know how to respond. He was torn between fear and hope. Mark placed a hand on his shoulder. Please, give me a chance to thank you in my way. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, I'll come. Good, Mark said, with a warm, relieved smile. Tomorrow at 10. The receptionist will expect you. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like any ordinary man. But Daniel stood frozen, his thoughts racing. A billionaire had asked him to come to his office. A billionaire had taken interest in him. Why and what would happen next? He didn't know it yet, but their worlds were about to collide in a way that would change both their futures forever and reveal a truth neither of them expected. The next morning, Daniel stood in front of a tall glass building in the center of the city. The sunlight reflected off its windows like silver. People in suits walked in and out with confident steps. Expensive cars lined the front drive. Everything smelled like money and power. Daniel wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans. His shirt was clean but old. The collar was worn. His shoes had small cracks near the toes. He felt completely out of place. What am I doing here, he thought. But Mark had asked him to come, and Daniel kept his promises. Inside the lobby, cold air conditioning brushed against his face. Chandeliers glowed overhead. A massive logo covered the back wall, Morris Enterprises. He stared at it. He had seen that name only on news websites and billboards. Now he was standing under it. The receptionist, a woman in a dark suit, smiled politely. "Good morning. You must be Daniel." Daniel blinked. Yes. Mr. Morris is expecting you. Please take the elevator to the 38th floor. Mr. Morris. Hearing Mark's real name still felt unreal. Daniel stepped into the elevator. His heart beat faster with every floor it climbed. When the doors opened, he walked into a hallway lined with framed photos, hospitals built by the company schools, funded bridges completed. At the end of the hallway stood a pair of tall wooden doors. Daniel swallowed hard and knocked. "Come in," a warm voice answered. He pushed the door open. Inside, the office was huge. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city. A large desk stood near the center, and behind it, no longer wearing torn clothes but a clean suit, stood Mark Morris, the man he met as a beggar. Mark smiled when he saw Daniel. "Welcome. I'm glad you came." Daniel stared. Seeing him like this, strong, elegant, powerful, felt like seeing a completely different person, but his eyes were the same. I almost didn't," Daniel admitted. "I've never been in a place like this." "You belong here more than you think," Mark said gently. "Sit, please." Daniel sat, but he kept his hands tightly together, afraid to touch anything. Mark walked around the desk and stood in front of him. "I owe you honesty, so let me begin with that." He pulled a file from the table and handed it to Daniel. Inside were photos of him, working at the coffee stall, carrying boxes, helping neighbors, pushing his mother's wheelchair at the clinic. A picture of Lily taken from some distance. Daniel felt his breath catch. "Why do you have these?" "I needed to understand who you are," Mark said. "After what happened at the bus station, I asked some people to look into your life." Daniel froze. "So you investigated me?" "I did," Mark said softly. "But not to judge you, to know you." Daniel looked down at the photos. There were no staged moments, just his real quiet life, hard, humble, full of struggle. "You help people whenever you can," Mark said. "Even when you can barely help yourself. You take care of your mother. You protect your sister. You work more hours than any man should. And you never complain." Daniel shook his head. "My life isn't special." "It is," Mark said firmly. "And it showed me something I hadn't seen in years, true goodness." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He wasn't used to praise, especially not from someone like this. Mark placed another document on the table. This one looked official. "I want to offer you a job," Mark said. "A real one. Not sweeping stalls, not unloading boxes. Something stable, something with a future." Daniel blinked hard. "What kind of job?" "Entry-level training in our technical department. You mentioned once that you wanted to be an electrician or technician. We will train you, pay you fairly, help you grow." Daniel stared at him, stunned. "But I left school years ago. I'm not qualified." "You will be," Mark said. "We will help you." Daniel's heart hammered. This felt like a dream. Too big, too bright. But before he could respond, the office door opened. A young man stepped in expensive suit, polished shoes, confident walk. Adrian, Mark's son. He froze when he saw Daniel. "What is he doing here?" Adrian demanded. Daniel felt small again, as if he had no right to sit in this beautiful room. Mark's expression tightened. "He is my guest." "Your guest," Adrian scoffed. "Dad, he's nobody from a bus station. Why would you bring someone like him here?" Daniel's stomach twisted. The humiliation burned. But Mark didn't raise his voice. He spoke calmly. "Sit down, Adrian." "I won't," Adrian snapped. "I want to know why he's even in my father's office." Mark turned to Daniel. "Daniel, may I tell him?" Daniel nodded nervously. Mark faced his son. "He's here because he passed the test you failed." Adrian blinked. "What test?" "The one I created to see how you treat people who have nothing," Mark said. "I disguised myself as a beggar. I sat at the station. I watched how you reacted." Adrian turned pale. "Wait, that was you yesterday, Dad?" "I didn't know." "That's the point," Mark said quietly. "You didn't know. And you still treated a stranger with cruelty." Adrian's face went hot with embarrassment. I I didn't think." "No," Mark interrupted. "You didn't. But Daniel did." Adrian looked at Daniel again this time, not with anger but confusion, maybe even shame. "He defended me," Mark said. "He spoke up when others walked away." Adrian fell silent. Mark turned back to Daniel. "I'm offering you the job because you deserve it. Not because you pity me. Not because you asked, but because you showed character." Daniel shook his head slightly. "Why me? You don't even know me fully." "I know enough," Mark replied. Silence filled the room. Then a voice, soft, careful. "Dad," Adrian whispered, "are you really giving him a job in our company?" "Yes," Mark said without hesitation. "But he is what you should learn to be." Mark finished. "A good man." Daniel didn't know where to look. Shame, pride, fear, hope, they all mixed inside him. Then Mark placed a hand on his shoulder. "If you accept, you can start next week, and your first month's salary will be advanced. I know your family needs help now, not later." Daniel's breath caught. His eyes stung. For the first time in years, he felt something rising inside him. Not fear, not exhaustion. Hope. Real hope. But the moment didn't last long. Outside the office, a loud crash echoed through the hallway. Somebody shouted. Footsteps rushed. Daniel, Mark, and Adrian all turned toward the door. Something was happening. Something serious. Daniel stood up fast, his heart racing, unaware that the next few minutes would change everything again. A security guard burst into the office. His uniform was slightly torn, and he was breathing hard. "Mr. Morris, sir, there's a situation downstairs," he said urgently. A man collapsed in the lobby. "We called an ambulance, but your staff is panicking. We need help controlling the crowd." Mark immediately moved toward the door. "Show me." But Daniel was already on his feet. "I can help," he said. "Let's go." Adrian hesitated, looking worried. He wasn't used to emergencies. His world was usually comfortable, predictable. But he followed them anyway. The three of them rushed down the elevator with the security guard. When the doors opened, the lobby was filled with noise, voices, echoing footsteps, running, people gasping. Some employees were crying, others recording with their phones. A man lay on the floor, unconscious and pale. Daniel pushed through the crowd. "Give him space," he said firmly. "Everyone back up." His voice carried surprising authority. People listened. He knelt beside the man and checked his breathing. It was shallow. "He needs air," Daniel said. "Open the doors, let fresh air in." Two guards hurried to pull the doors wide. Cold morning air rushed in. Daniel gently lifted the man's head and loosened his tie. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Help is coming." Adrian watched with wide eyes. "You know what to do," Daniel nodded. "My mom collapses sometimes when her heart gets bad." I've had to help her many times. That simple sentence hit Mark deeply. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and took over. They checked the man, stabilized him, and loaded him onto a stretcher. As they left, a paramedic turned to Daniel. You did well. You kept him stable. If not for you, it might have been worse. Daniel nodded, but he didn't smile. He was just relieved the man was alive. Mark looked at him with pride. Thank you, Daniel. Again, you stepped forward when others stepped back. Adrian looked at him too, but his expression was different now. Respect, maybe even admiration. When the crowd finally dispersed, Mark guided Daniel and Adrian to a quiet meeting room. Sit, Mark said. We need to talk. Everyone sat, though Adrian looked uneasy. Mark faced his son first. Do you see why I brought him here? He asked. Adrian lowered his eyes. Yes. Do you see why the test mattered? I do, Adrian said quietly. Mark sighed. Son, I haven't been the best father. I gave you everything except the things that matter most. Empathy, humility, strength of character. I tried to teach you with words, but you didn't listen. So I tried showing you, and you failed. Adrian swallowed hard. I know. I'm sorry. Daniel looked away, giving them privacy. Mark continued, but what I didn't expect was for Daniel to show us what real goodness looks like. Adrian turned to Daniel. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was arrogant. I didn't think about your feelings. Daniel nodded softly. It's okay. People say harsh things when they don't understand someone. Adrian looked down ashamed. You defended my father and helped a stranger downstairs. I wouldn't have known what to do. You would have learned, Daniel said gently. Everyone can change. Mark smiled faintly. That is exactly why I want Daniel in this company. Adrian hesitated. Can I ask you something? He said to Daniel. Sure. How do you stay so calm, so kind? Even when your life is hard, Daniel paused thinking. Then he said, because anger doesn't feed my family. Kindness doesn't fix everything, but it makes the world a little easier to live in. And I guess I never want to become the kind of person who hurts others just because I'm hurting. The room fell silent. Mark felt something shift inside him, a quiet hope. He placed 3 envelopes on the table, one in front of Daniel, one in front of Adrian, and one he kept for himself. Today taught me something, Mark said. It showed me that a company doesn't grow with money alone. It grows with people who have heart, people like Daniel. Daniel looked confused. What's in the envelope? Mark motioned for him to open it. Inside was a contract employment training program salary, and a note handwritten by Mark, for the man who reminded me what goodness looks like. Daniel's eyes stung. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Mark said. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. Mark smiled. Then he turned to his son. Adrian, open yours. Adrian opened his envelope. His eyes widened. It's a work assignment, he said. Yes, Mark replied. You will start at one of our community centers. You will work with people who struggle. You will listen, learn, and help. You will earn your place, not inherit it. Adrian swallowed. Okay, I'll do it. Daniel glanced at him and offered a small, encouraging smile. Adrian seemed surprised but grateful. Then Mark opened the 3rd envelope and sighed. It's my resignation letter. Both Daniel and Adrian stared at him. What Adrian stood abruptly. Dad, no. You can't leave the company. Mark looked at both of them. I built this company, but I don't want to die behind a desk. I want to spend my last years fixing my family, not buildings, and maybe helping people anonymously like I did yesterday. Daniel's chest tightened. Are you sick? Mark shook his head. No, just tired and ready to give the company to someone who deserves it someday. Someone who has heart. His eyes drifted between Adrian and Daniel. But not yet. Not until both of you grow. Over the next months, life changed completely. Daniel started his training. He worked hard studying in the evenings after caring for his mother and sister. He learned quickly wiring safety systems repair techniques. His supervisors liked him. His co-workers admired him. For the first time, he felt he had a future. Mark checked on him often, always offering guidance. Adrian changed too. Working in the community center humbled him. He met families struggling like Daniel's. He saw the pain he'd never seen before. He learned patience. He learned responsibility. And he tried slowly to build a friendship with Daniel. Sometimes they shared lunch. Sometimes they trained together in the workshop. Sometimes they just talked about life. One afternoon, while Daniel was repairing an old hospital generator for training, Adrian approached. "Hey, Adrian," said awkwardly. "Want help?" Daniel smiled. "Sure. Hold this." As they worked side by side, Adrian said, "You know, I didn't like you at first." Daniel laughed. "I noticed. But now," Adrian said, "I'm glad you came into our lives. You made my father happier, and you made me better." Daniel's hands paused. He felt warmth in his chest. We all help each other. For a moment, they just worked quietly. Then Mark appeared in the doorway, watching them with a soft smile. "Do you believe one act of kindness can really change a destiny?" the narrator whispers to the viewer. Mark certainly believed it now. Everything seemed to be improving, until the day someone jealous and angry decided to ruin everything. A storm was coming. The first sign of it appeared in the form of a woman with sharp eyes, expensive perfume, and a file tucked under her arm. She walked into the company lobby, her heels clicking like warning shots, and she asked the receptionist one chilling question: "Where can I find Daniel Ramos?" Her name was Veronica Hale. She was one of the senior managers at Morris Enterprises, smart, well-dressed, confident, and feared by many. She had worked in the company for over a decade and expected to climb higher soon. But she had one weakness. She wanted power more than anything. And when she saw Mark giving attention to a newcomer, a poor young man with no degree, no connections, no family name, she felt something burn inside her. Jealousy, because in her mind, Daniel was a threat. If Mark trusted Daniel, if Adrian liked Daniel, if employees admired Daniel, then someone like Veronica could lose everything she had worked for. So she came looking for him. Daniel was in the workshop, tightening screws on an electrical panel, when the door opened sharply. "Daniel Ramos," Veronica said. He turned surprised. "Yes, I'm Veronica Hale, Senior Operations Manager." She handed him a cold smile. "We need to talk." Daniel wiped his hands on a cloth. "Sure." "What's wrong?" She stepped closer, circling him like a hawk. "I've been reviewing employee files, background checks, performance reports." Daniel nodded slowly. "And yours," she said, tapping her folder, "is incomplete." Daniel blinked. "Incomplete, yes," she said. "No diploma, no official training, multiple part-time jobs, family medical debt. Your profile does not meet company standards." Daniel felt a sting, but kept his voice steady. "Mr. Morris approved my position personally." "Yes," she said sharply. "And that is exactly the problem." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Veronica leaned forward. "People are talking. Whispers. Rumors. They say you manipulated him. Pretended to be kind so he would take pity on you. Used your poverty to gain a position you didn't earn." Daniel froze. "That's not true," he said quietly. She smirked. "Of course you'd say that." He wanted to defend himself, but she cut him off. "I am preparing a formal review," she said. "One that could remove you from the program, unless you admit how you really got here." Daniel's stomach tightened. "I got here because Mr. Morris believed in me." "No," Veronica said. "You got here because you fooled him." Daniel shook his head firmly. "I didn't trick anyone." Her smile faded. "You're stubborn. But understand this, you don't belong here. People like you slow us down." Daniel felt like someone had punched him. "Why are you doing this? because she said this company should be run by people with experience, education, and class, not charity cases. His jaw clenched. I work hard every day. I study at night. I do everything they ask me to. And it still isn't enough, she said coldly. You will never be more than a street boy pretending to play employee. The words cut deep. Daniel stood there fighting the hurt building in his chest. Then the workshop door opened again. Adrian walked in. At first he didn't understand the tension. Hey guys, what's going on? Veronica turned smiling sweetly now. Adrian, perfect timing. I was just discussing Daniel's future with him. Adrian frowned. His future? Why, Veronica folded her arms. Because your father has been blinded by sympathy. Daniel does not meet company standards. I am recommending termination. Daniel's heart dropped. Adrian stared at her. No. Daniel belongs here. Does he, she said. Or are you just repeating your father's mistakes? Adrian stepped in front of Daniel. He works harder than half the staff. He helps people. He shows up early. He studies late. He's exactly the kind of person this company needs. Veronica's expression darkened. You defend him, yes, Adrian said without hesitation. Then you are a fool, she snapped. Both of you. She stormed out her heels, echoing down the hall. As soon as she left, Adrian turned to Daniel. Are you okay? Daniel nodded, but he was shaken. Why is she doing this? Because Adrian sighed. Veronica wants my father's approval. She wants power, and she thinks you're competition. Daniel let out a shaky breath. I don't want to take anything from her. I just want to work. That's all. Adrian placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. Then we'll fight this. Daniel looked at him. You mean that? Adrian nodded. Yes. You helped my father. You helped strangers. You helped me change. I'm not letting someone tear you down because of jealousy. For the first time, Daniel felt like he wasn't fighting alone. But Veronica wasn't done. She gathered documents, some true, some twisted, some manipulated. She printed Daniel's unpaid bills photos of his old apartment records of his part-time jobs. She compiled them into a thick file titled Evidence of Incompatibility. Daniel Ramos. Then she went straight to Mark. She walked into his office with confidence. Mr. Morris, we need to talk. It's urgent. Mark looked up. What is it, Veronica? She placed the file on his desk. It's about Daniel. Mark frowned. What about him? She opened the file dramatically. He is unqualified, uneducated, financially unstable, and I believe he manipulated his way into this program. Mark stiffened. You believe, or you have proof? Veronica pushed the papers forward. Isn't this enough? This boy is dangerous for the company, for your family. You are trusting the wrong person. But Mark didn't touch the papers. He simply asked, did you speak to my son? She hesitated. No. Did you speak to Daniel? No. Then you came with accusations, not evidence, Mark said calmly. She opened her mouth, but Mark raised his hand. Veronica, sit down. She did reluctantly. Mark leaned forward. Do you know why Daniel is here? Because you pity him, she said. No, Mark replied firmly. Because he showed more character in one moment than many people show in their entire careers. Veronica's eyes narrowed. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment, and you, Mark said sharply, are letting ambition cloud yours. Her face flushed with anger. Mark continued. Look at the file again. All I see is a man who has suffered, worked, and sacrificed for his family. Not a liar, not a manipulator, a human being with dignity. Veronica stood abruptly. So you choose him over me, I choose truth, Mark said. And the truth is, you are bullying someone who did nothing wrong. Her voice rose. He doesn't belong here. Mark stood too, his voice deep and final. He belongs here more than you right now. The room fell silent. Veronica stared at him with icy fury. You will regret this, she whispered, and she walked out, slamming the door behind her. Outside, employees turned as Veronica marched through the hall. Her lips were tight, her eyes burning. If she couldn't destroy Daniel quietly, she would do it publicly. She waited until the weekly company assembly where everyone gathered in the auditorium, hundreds of employees, and she stepped onto the stage. Before we begin, she said loudly, I have a concern to raise about a certain employee, Daniel Ramos. The room fell silent. Daniel, sitting in the back row beside Adrian, froze. Veronica lifted the file in her hand like a weapon. This young man is unqualified, untrained, and a danger to our reputation. He is here only because Mr. Morris let sentiment overrule professionalism. Gasps spread through the room. Daniel felt his face burn. His chest tightened. He wanted to disappear. Veronica pointed at him. Stand up, Daniel. If you want to work here, explain yourself. Daniel rose slowly. His legs trembled. He looked out at the sea of faces, curious, judgmental, confused. He swallowed. I never asked for special treatment, Daniel said softly. I work hard. I study every night. I only want to make a better life for my family, Veronica smirked. And do you think hard work can replace talent, education, experience? You do not deserve to be here. Adrian stood up beside him. He deserves it more than many here, including you, people whispered. Veronica glared. Sit down, Adrian. This does not involve you. Yes, it does, Adrian said loudly. Daniel taught me more about being a decent person than any class ever did. Veronica opened her mouth to fire back, but another voice cut through the room, a deep, calm voice. Mark, enough. Everyone turned as Mark walked onto the stage. He stood between Daniel and Veronica. This ends now, he said. Veronica stepped back. Mr. Morris, with all respect, you showed no respect today, Mark said. Not to Daniel, not to the company, not to truth. His voice echoed. He turned to the employees. Daniel is not here because of charity. He is here because he has integrity, because he defended someone he thought was a stranger, because he helps without expecting anything back. The crowd murmured. Mark looked at Daniel with pride. He is the kind of person we need, the kind of person who reminds us why this company exists, to help people, not to judge them. Then he faced Veronica. You use this assembly to humiliate an innocent man. That violates our ethics code. He took a breath. Veronica Hale, effective immediately. You are suspended pending full investigation. Gas filled the room. Veronica's face went white. You can't. I can, Mark said. And I just did. She glared at Daniel with pure hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. Then she stormed out of the auditorium. Silence lingered. Then applause began. Soft at first, then louder. People clapped for Daniel, for Mark, for truth. Tears stung Daniel's eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. The narrator turns to the audience. Have you ever been attacked for just trying to do good? And wondered if anyone would stand up for you? Daniel had wondered that too. But today he wasn't alone. Today the truth had won. And from this moment, everything would begin to change. The assembly ended with whispers, applause, and stunned faces. But for Daniel, the room felt like a warm blur, like sunlight after months of rain. Adrian stayed close beside him, almost protective as employees approached one by one. You handled that well, Daniel. You didn't deserve any of that. We're glad you're here. Every word felt unreal. For the first time in his life, Daniel wasn't just surviving, he was seen. Mark placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. Come with me, son. Daniel blinked. Son. Mark corrected himself with a soft smile. Forgive me. A habit of the heart. Adrian smirked. You can call him that. He's more of a son to you than I've been lately. Daniel nudged him lightly. Don't say that. You're his real family. Adrian's smile faded into something sincere. Yeah, and I'm finally trying to act like it. Later that afternoon, Mark took Daniel and Adrian to his private lounge in the office building. It was a quiet, warm room with large windows and soft lighting. No company awards, no trophies, just family photos of a younger Adrian and a smiling woman with kind eyes. Daniel paused. Is this? My late wife, Mark, said softly. She would have liked you, Daniel. Daniel felt his chest warm. Thank you. They sat and a comfortable silence settled around them. Mark broke it gently. You both taught me something today. You, Daniel, showed courage, and you, Adrian, showed loyalty. I'm proud of you both. Adrian's eyes lowered emotion, tightening his throat. Dad, I'm sorry for how I used to be. I didn't know how blind I was. Mark's voice softened. It's never too late to change. Daniel watched the two of them, father and son, mending something long broken. Maybe that was the real miracle happening here. After a moment, Adrian looked at Daniel. You know, I wouldn't have stood up there today 2 months ago. You did that. You changed me. Daniel shook his head. You changed yourself. I just showed you a different angle. Mark chuckled. Daniel, my son, you are wise in ways most men never learn. Daniel looked at him surprised. Son, again Mark's eyes warmed. If life had been different, I might have wished for 2 boys. Daniel froze. Before he could answer, there was a knock on the door. A staff member entered with a tablet. Mr. Morris, the investigation team, has reviewed the footage of the assembly and workplace interactions. They confirmed everything. Ms. Hale will face disciplinary action. Mark nodded. Thank you. The man left. Adrian let out a breath. So it's really over. Mark looked at Daniel. Yes. She can't hurt you anymore. Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling the weight finally lift from his chest. A week passed and everything began to settle. Daniel studied harder, learned faster, and grew confident. The other trainees respected him. The supervisors trusted him. He earned his place not through pity, but through skill and heart. Adrian visited the community center every afternoon, helping families listening to their stories. Sometimes he returned to the office tired, quiet, thoughtful, and sometimes he would say things like, Daniel, kids over there remind me of Lily. They deserve better, or I never knew how hard life was outside our home. I want to fix something. I want to be part of the solution. He was changing, truly changing, and Mark saw it. One evening after work, Daniel and Adrian walked together to the bus stop. The sunset painted the sky orange and cars passed with soft rumbling sounds. Adrian nudged Daniel. Want a ride home? I can ask the driver. Daniel shook his head. No, it's okay. I like the bus. Adrian smirked. You're the only person who says that. Daniel laughed. Maybe because I'm used to walking. A moving seat feels like luxury. They both laughed. Then Adrian grew quiet. Daniel, can I ask something? Sure. Do you ever resent people like me? Rich people? Daniel looked at him not with anger, but kindness. No, I resent situations, not people. We're all born into different places. What matters is what we do from there. Adrian nodded slowly. I'm trying. I really am. I know, Daniel said softly, and he meant it. Meanwhile, Mark visited Daniel's home for the first time. Daniel panicked when he arrived. He worried the apartment was too small, too old, too worn. But Mark didn't look at the peeling paint or the flickering hallway light. He looked at Maria, Daniel's mother, sitting in her chair, surprised but smiling warmly. Mrs. Ramos, Mark said gently, your son is extraordinary. Maria's eyes softened with tears. I always knew he was special. Mark held her hand. You have raised him well, and I promise you he will have a future. Lily peeked from behind Daniel, shy at first, until Mark smiled warmly at her. "Hello, Lily. I hear you want to be a nurse." Her eyes widened. "How? Did you know good dreams are worth knowing?" Mark said. "And worth helping." He offered her a scholarship brochure for a youth medical program. Lily gasped. Daniel froze. "Mark, this is too much." "No," Mark said quietly. "This is what your kindness has grown into. I want to support your family the way you supported me when you didn't even know who I was." Daniel swallowed hard, overwhelmed. For the first time in years, his home felt filled with something bright hope. Weeks later, when spring arrived, the company held a celebration event for community projects. Employees, partners, and families gathered in a decorated hall full of golden lights and soft music. Daniel was nervous. He wore a new suit, simple but elegant, gifted by Mark. Adrian stood beside him, looking proud. "You're doing great," Adrian said. "Stop fixing your collar." Daniel laughed nervously. "I feel like I don't belong here." "You belong here more than half the people in this room," Adrian said sincerely. Mark approached them. "Gentlemen ready?" Daniel nodded. The ceremony began. Mark stepped onto the stage and gave a speech about kindness, humility, rebuilding, and growth. Then he said words that made Daniel freeze. "Tonight I want to honor someone who reminded me of the values this company was built on. Mr. Daniel Ramos." The room applauded. Daniel's heart raced as he walked onto the stage. Mark shook his hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "You changed my life." Daniel's throat tightened. "No, sir. You changed mine." Mark handed him a small plaque, recognition of outstanding integrity. It wasn't about awards. It was about being seen, being valued. When they stepped off stage, Adrian was waiting with a grin. "I'm proud of you, Daniel." Daniel smiled softly. "I'm proud of you too." Adrian blinked, surprised and deeply moved. After the ceremony, as the night grew quiet, Mark and Adrian walked Daniel outside. Streetlights glowed softly and cool air brushed their faces. Mark said, "Daniel, I want you to stay in this company. Grow with us. And when you're ready, I want you to take on leadership." Daniel's eyes widened. I, I, I don't know if I'm ready for that." "You will be," Mark said confidently. "You have the heart of a leader." Adrian nudged him. "And when you get there, maybe I'll finally deserve to stand beside you." Daniel shook his head. "We'll stand together." A warm silence settled. The three of them, once strangers, now felt almost like family. Daniel looked up at the sky stars faint above the city lights. His life had been dark for so long, but now he finally saw a future with purpose, a future with people who believed in him. And just as the night felt peaceful, Mark turned to him and said softly, "Daniel, my boy, you changed us both." Daniel's eyes glistened. "And you changed me." The moment felt deep and gentle, like healing. But this story wasn't over yet. One last chapter remained, a final moment of closure, gratitude, and hope. Spring slowly faded into early summer, and life settled into a warm, steady rhythm. For the first time in years, Daniel woke each morning not with fear, but with purpose. His mother's health improved with better medication. Lily joined her weekend medical classes and began studying with excitement instead of hopelessness. Their apartment still looked old, but it felt lighter, brighter, filled with laughter again. One quiet Saturday afternoon, Mark invited Daniel and Adrian to a small park on the edge of the city. It wasn't a fancy place, just a calm field with benches, tall trees, and children running around with kites. The sky was soft blue and a gentle breeze moved the leaves. The three of them sat together on a wooden bench. No suits, no business talk, no tension, just people. Daniel breathed deeply. "It's peaceful here." Mark nodded. "My wife and I used to sit here every year on our anniversary. It always reminded us to slow down." Daniel smiled gently. "I understand that." Adrian leaned back, watching a little boy chase a kite. "You know, months ago, I never would have sat here. I didn't understand what peace felt like, or why people choose quiet over noise. Daniel nudged him. You've changed because of you, Adrian said softly. And because of yourself, Daniel replied. A comfortable silence settled. Birds sang above them. A family nearby laughed while taking photos. Everything felt simple, human, real. Then Mark turned to Daniel, his tone warm and fatherly. Daniel, I want to tell you something. Daniel looked at him. Yes, I used to think success was measured in buildings, contracts, and numbers, Mark said. But now I see it clearly. Success is measured in the people you touch, the lives you lift, and the hearts you change. Daniel listened quietly. You didn't just save me from my disappointment as a father, Mark continued. You showed my son a better path. You helped rebuild my family, and you reminded me of the kind of man I want to be. Daniel's chest tightened with emotion. I only did what felt right, and that Mark said is what makes you extraordinary. Adrian nodded. He's right, and I want you to know, no matter what happens in the future, you'll always have us. Daniel blinked fast, overwhelmed. Thank you, both of you. Mark smiled gently. How is your mother doing? Better, Daniel said. Much better. She smiles more now. She told me she hasn't felt this hopeful in years. And Lily, Adrian asked. Daniel's expression warmed. She loves her classes. She talks about becoming a nurse all the time. She says she wants to help people the way people helped us. Mark nodded with pride. Good. That's how kindness grows. A light breeze passed over them. Daniel stared at the families in the park, the sunlight through the leaves, the calmness in his heart. It feels strange, he said softly. What does Adrian ask? After so many years of fighting just to survive, feeling safe feels unfamiliar. Mark looked at him with gentle understanding. You deserve safety, Daniel. You always did. Adrian added, and you'll never fight alone again. The three of them sat quietly watching the sky change color as afternoon shifted toward evening. It was simple. It was beautiful. And it symbolized something important, a new beginning, not built on wealth, not built on status, but built on trust, respect, and kindness. Finally, as they stood to leave, Mark placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Your story isn't about where you started, he said softly. It's about who you became and who you helped us become. Daniel felt tears sting behind his eyes, but he smiled. Thank you for believing in me. We don't just believe in you, Adrian said. We're proud of you. And together they walked back toward the city, three men connected by a moment at a bus station that changed their destinies forever. Their steps were steady, their paths were aligned, and their futures were full of hope. Sometimes the world tests us in unexpected ways, not to break us, but to reveal who we truly are. Daniel had nothing except kindness in his heart, yet that kindness opened doors no money ever could. We often underestimate the power of one small act, a gentle word, a helping hand, or the courage to stand up for someone who seems invisible. But kindness spreads. It changes people. It changes families. And sometimes it changes an entire destiny. So remember this, who you are when no one is watching is who you become when everyone is watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video. It helps more people find stories like this. Leave a comment about which moment moved you the most. I read every single one. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next emotional story we create together. Thank you for spending this time with me. See you in the next video.